Our next speaker is James Young. And for those that may have come late, let me restate the three-part subject that we're talking about today. And that's the theory of evolution is not scientific. The theory of evolution contradicts established scientific laws. And the theory of evolution is for all practical purposes not mathematically possible. And now we have James Young, who's going to speak for 30 minutes.
I was once a Pentecostal preacher. I did not believe in evolution. I believed in creationism. And I did not have a choice in that matter. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize the danger to the Judeo-Islamic Christian faith inherent in the scientific theory of evolution. Evolution makes no provision for a supernatural creator. Science explains the origins of life without involving supernaturalism. Science has fired God. If public schools are allowed to teach evolution, the next generation will be a generation of free-thinking atheists. With that much at stake, Christian activists will not allow that to happen. As a Pentecostal preacher, I not only recognize that evolution removed God from creation, I also recognize that evolution removed sin. And without sin, we don't need a Savior. Not only that, but I recognized the threat to Christian teachings concerning humans having a spirit soul, one that lives forever. What facet of evolution facilitates that? Did we evolve a spirit soul when we were single-celled creatures, or later on when we were swinging from trees? It is very obvious to any objective observer that if evolution is ever accepted by the masses, as it is in the scientific community, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity will be well on their way to the scrap heap of history. And that is why I put bumper stickers like this on my car, because it is true, and we all agree that it is true. As a Pentecostal preacher, I recognized those threats. As a critical thinking atheist, I still recognize them. Let there be no mistake. If this threat to monotheism did not exist, creationists would have no interest whatsoever in assailing evolution. I understand well the religious necessity to assail evolution. I simply do not agree with the ethical issues involved in doing so. Creationist efforts have been very largely successful. Evolution is either not seriously taught in public schools or very little is said on the subject. As a result, public school students know very little, if anything, about it. Are you skeptical? Well, set up a testing program in any university, including this one, and test students on the subject. Overall, they'll fail miserably. Public opinion polls show that most Americans with a high school diploma or less have little or no information about evolution other than what is trumpeted by creationists across America. Most of those Americans continue to believe in creationism. Some churches now promote a form of creationism called intelligent design. Apparently, they don't believe some of the arguments that have been stated here today about evolution. These churches have begun to accept evolution as the mechanism of creation, provided that God is included in the explanation as the intelligent designer. And that is their only problem with it. Of course, science does not need an intelligent designer to explain the origin of life, and refuses to pollute the theory of evolution with religion. So the struggle continues. Some creationists recognize that intelligent design evolution is really not better than just plain old evolution. The problems I mentioned earlier of first sin, the fall of man, the need for salvation, and the existence of a spirit soul are not resolved at all. As absurd as biblical creationism may be, it alone offers the only real hope of a future for monotheism. Realistically, I don't think monotheism can destroy science. The days of burning scientists at the stake for heresy are long gone. Science is not going to go away. The scientific community of tomorrow is likely to be just as confident of evolution as they are today. The only question is, will the masses be allowed to be educated to the facts concerning evolution, or will theists continue their successful campaign to block science education in public schools? I wish I could say it is only a matter of time before the public wakes up and demands quality education. Truthfully, I'm very pessimistic that that will happen under our present educational system. If it doesn't, monotheism is going to be with us for quite a long while. In large part, the science curriculum of our public schools is not decided either by the academic or the scientific community. The process of controlling what is taught in public schools works something like this. Fundamentalists utilize every venue and media opportunity possible to prejudice the religious masses to be hostile to what science teaches. Fundamentalists enter candidates into the political arena to acquire seats on local school boards. These boards will decide textbook content and class curriculum. Fundamentalists get out the religious vote. The misinformed masses elect the fundamentalists to their local school board. With fundamentalists on the school board, pressure is brought to bear to ensure that religion encroaches into every classroom. Comprehensive instruction about evolution is either banned or suppressed. History and science classes are polluted with biblical mythology. Comprehensive sex education is replaced with abstinence-only dogma. The school board is no longer capable of ensuring a quality education in public schools. Over the course of history, humanity has done many evil things to itself. Monotheistic creationism has the appeal to mobilize the masses in support of many anti-human agendas. And the dumbing down of public education is just one of those anti-human agendas. What is taught in our public schools is in reality dictated by popular vote of the misinformed masses and not by the scientific community or the academic community. As long as this system continues, I see no real hope for quality education in the United States of America. As a Pentecostal preacher, I thought I had a monopoly on the truth. I believed the Bible was the infallible Word of God. I believed that if the Bible said it, God said it, and that settled it. I believed Jesus was an infallible source of truth. In every sense of the word, I was a warrior for Christ. I believed I had found the truth. And having found the truth, there was no reason to continue the search for it. For a long time, I didn't. In fact, I was hostile to objective consideration of any idea contrary to my faith. One must never underestimate the role of agendas in confounding enlightenment. But troubling questions kept raising their ugly head, and I handled these questions with apologetic flim-flam rationalizations. I had no choice in the matter. It was the only way I could defend my faith. By skillfully employing apologetic flim-flam, I was able to miraculously transform fantasy into reality, and while at the same time transform scientific reality into fantasy. I was not being honest with those who had questions, and I was not being honest with myself either. The ethical issues associated with using apologetic flim-flam troubled me as much as the questions I could not reasonably answer. Now, let's take a moment and discuss the apologetic flim-flammer. I do not use this term maliciously as an ad hominem attack. I use this term to let you know that not all sources of information are honest, and I use this term to let you know that agendas can get into the way of truth. I want the definition of a flim-flammer to be very clear. A flim-flammer is one who knowingly and willfully employs subversion of information, omission of information, outright lies, demagoguery, and simplistic analysis, an attempt to manipulate the thought processes of others with the ultimate goal of controlling their conclusions. And now we know that all of us know that such people exist in every venue on this planet. And that's not to claim with any certainty that any specific person here today is a flim-flammer. However, I am implying that apologetic flim-flam is often used to prop up agendas that lack credibility. And this might be used here today. And in all fairness, it is quite possible that I might be the person that uses it. Of course, I will argue that that is not the case. But can you believe me just because I deny it? No, you cannot. You're going to have to listen to every word everybody says today very carefully. Everyone knows that the speakers here today want to influence the thought processes of the audience and their conclusions. That's fine. But are any willing to subvert information, omit information, tell outright lies, use demagoguery or simplistic analysis in order to get the job done? Well, determining if flim-flam is used or not, or by whom, that's your challenge, not mine. When I was a Pentecostal preacher, without any doubt whatsoever, I was an apologetic flim-flammer, and I admit that to you. One day, I resolved to cut out the flim-flam, and I vowed to answer the questions honestly. I wanted to know the real truth. I wanted to champion it, and I realized I had to be true to myself first. If monotheism is truth, it would have to stand on its own merits and not upon my skills as an apologetic flim-flammer. The result of that commitment is standing, or sitting in this case, here before you now. I'm proud to be an atheist and a humanist. I do not have a belief in any God, nor do I have a belief that no God exists. I do not know if a God exists. Yes, I am confident that the Judeo-Islamic Christian God does not exist. I am not an infallible source of truth, nor do I claim to be. And science is not an infallible source of truth, nor does it claim to be. One might argue that reality might be an infallible source of truth, but unfortunately our perception of reality is skewed because of our agendas, biases, and ignorance. From a practical standpoint, I have come to understand that there is no infallible source we can rely upon to spoon-feed us truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Consequently, we must use our heads for something other than a hat rack. I have confidence in science and the scientific community. I have critically challenged the scientific method. I have tried to find flaws in it, all to no avail. I continually ask critics the question, what's wrong with the scientific method? Oh, I get answers, but I never get a reasonable answer. I'm not here to spoon-feed you truth. I have no expectation that you should allow me to spoon-feed you truth. If you were to allow me to spoon-feed you, I will think you gullible. Spoon-feeding is a term I use to describe a process whereby people suck up ideas without scrutinizing the agenda of the source or the quality of the content. My critics would like to argue that I have allowed the scientific community to spoon-feed me. But I have scrutinized the scientific method, the scientific community, and scientific theory. I have no expectation that any are infallible, but I am satisfied that all are worthy of my conditional confidence. I am here to offer you ideas for consideration. I have every hope that you will weigh the merit of these ideas with objectivity. I welcome critical scrutiny of the ideas I hold to be true. I believe they can withstand critical examination. But I have been wrong before, and I could still be wrong about some of them. If they're absurd, contradict reality, or unreasonable, at odds with common sense, I'll just simply ask you to reject them. I have some knowledge of science, the scientific method, and evolution. At the same time, I recognize that I'm unqualified to make some judgments. My confidence in evolution springs in large part from my confidence in the scientific method and the scientific community. I hold this confidence because the scientific community is comprised of numerous highly educated individuals. I respect education, especially in such large numbers. Contrary to the misinformation disseminated by creationists, the scientific community has overwhelmingly and universally accepted evolution as fact. The scientific community has tapped into a mountain of information and evidence upon which to base its conclusions. I have only tapped into a very tiny amount of information, and probably that is the case with you. The scientific method used by the scientific community is ideally constructed and employed to root out and expose fraudulent ideas. Testing, scrutiny, and falsification are its mandate. I have no reason to conclude that the scientific community is involved in a planetary conspiracy to deceive the world with regards to the origins of life. I'd like to talk for a moment about faith. My dictionary says that faith is confident belief in the truth, value, or trustworthiness of a person, idea, or a thing. This definition is consistent with usage in both religion and science. Some of us have confidence or faith in ideas without substantiation. That is, we lack knowledge or evidence that might threaten the idea. We have blind faith. The uneducated nurture this kind of faith. Some of us have confidence or faith in ideas with substantiation. That is, we're readily willing to seriously consider, any relevant knowledge or evidence that might falsify our belief. We want our belief to be in harmony with all evidence. The scientific community and the critical thinking community employ this kind of faith. But there are some of us who have confidence or faith in ideas with hostility. Hostility to any evidence which might threaten the credibility of it. That is, we allow bias and agendas to control our thought processes and actions to the extent that we become prisoners of our ideas. We will readily employ apologetic flim to prop up our false ideas and avoid accountability to those who question us. Clerics, mystics, demagogues, flammers, and con artists, I have found nurture this kind of faith in both themselves and in others. In my search for an understanding of the mysteries of life, I am committed to faith with substantiation. That is, I am committed to seriously consider any relevant knowledge or evidence that might falsify any belief that I have. I am equally committed to recognizing my own biases and agendas, because we all have them. As a result, I have abandoned hostility to knowledge or evidence that threatens my agendas or biases. I refuse to become a prisoner of an idea. I frequently discuss the scientific method with students on this campus, and I'm disappointed with their understanding. Many are under the impression that the scientific method is designed and employed to prove a hypothesis to be true. If you share that understanding, I'll ask you to reconsider. The scientific method is designed and employed to challenge the hypothesis. It is not designed and employed to prop it up. That is, if there exists any flaw, the scientific method can only be described as a never-ending witch hunt to find it. If you doubt that, I'll ask you to do some research. You have an access to the library, the internet, and your science department. Use these resources in an independent, objective investigation. I believe the scientific community can best be summed up in the scientific method can best be summed up in one sentence. It is a sentence well worth memorizing, and the principle it embodies is worth applying to every understanding we have. A single, well-substantiated fact, irreconcilable with a belief, is sufficient to prove that belief false. And if you want a copy of that sentence, I have plenty of copies. You can see me after the debate. Creationists come to us claiming to have one or more well-substantiated facts irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution. Well, I'm going to stipulate to you that if a creationist brings to the attention of the scientific community a single well-substantiated fact irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution, then I hold that the scientific theory of evolution will have been proven false. And so will any and every credible scientist on the face of this planet. However, I am, for a couple of reasons, skeptical that any creationist has ever done so. I note that the creationists are always pitching their argument to the uninformed. I am uninformed, and so are you. If there were a scientist here today agreeing with the creationist argument, even that wouldn't be sufficient to convince me. I require the scrutiny of the whole scientific community, not just one or two supporters of creationism who make a whole lot of noise. If creationists have a valid argument, they need to take it to the scientific community. If the scientific community is impressed, I'll be impressed. Why are creationists appealing to our ignorance? Do they think that the scientific community will capitulate if 50 million misinformed Americans claim creationism makes sense? Creationists know that the scientific community is not going to buy into apologetic flim-flam, but the masses will. And the masses are really what count. As long as the masses think that evolution is bunk, monotheism will flourish. I find it interesting that creationists are eager to embrace the idea that a single well-substantiated fact irreconcilable with the scientific theory of evolution is sufficient to prove evolution false. The premise of their argument is based solely on that principle. Yet these same people are hostile to the idea that even a multitude of well-substantiated facts irreconcilable with creationism are in any way sufficient to prove creationism false. Well, why is it they insist upon a double standard? Willing to hold evolution accountable to the scientific method, but not willing to hold creationism accountable. Is not creationism an explanation of an empirical event? Shouldn't creationist assertions be testable by scientific observations in geology, astronomy, anthropology, and biology, etc., just as evolution is? Well, of course. You know, I don't really think I need to defend evolution here today. The basic theory that all life evolved has survived the assault of critics since the early 1840s. As for the details of evolution, the scientific community always has and still is eager to find flaws based on sound scientific principles. As flaws are found, the theory will be modified as necessary to conform to the evidence, and our understanding of the mysteries of life are enhanced. That is the beauty of the scientific method, the ability to abide all evidence, always. If 100% of the misinformed masses are persuaded by creationists of this world, I will not be impressed. I will not be impressed because I understand the processes at work in religious evangelism. On the other hand, if the scientific community can be persuaded by creationists, then I will be impressed. I will have confidence in whatever modified theory the scientific community produces. I will have confidence because I understand the processes at work in science. Thank you.